This is my summer of living outside of my comfort zone. This is task number 2. The first one is Dancing with the Stars Grand Rapids, which was terrifying, which was really terrifying. So my name is Miranda Krajniak. I'm the executive director of the Urban Institute for Contemporary Arts. I'm going to say a quick shout out to my dad, who is going to watch this because my father is actually an evangelical preacher. And he was really shocked that I would be invited to speak to any kind of church-like body of people because I've been a self-avowed atheist for a very long time. And his response was, "What are you going to say?" And I was like, "Well, I'm going to talk about black holes, Dad." And he was like, "Oh, my God." So here it goes, Dad. So 1.3 billion light years away, at a time in which the Earth didn't even have little baby microorganisms working inside of it, 2 black holes collided. These were massive black holes, so not just little black holes, but really, really large ones. One was 36 times the mass of our sun. These are huge guys, and they've been dancing around each other for billions and billions of years, coming closer and closer and closer and closer until 1.3 billion years ago, they collided. But right before they collided, they rotated at 75 orbits per second around each other. And then they created a super, super massive black hole. Why are black holes interesting? Black holes are interesting, 1, because we cannot see them, and 2, is because they disrupt space-time. So, gravity and time work together. They're working together right now on Earth, which is really weird if you want to think about it. So our GPS satellites that just orbit our Earth actually have to be programmed for the type, because time on Earth is different than time in space. The closer you get to something that has gravity, time slows. Now, it's very minute, but we know this. But the Earth is super tiny. It's a little speck on the radar, really. A supermassive black hole is not tiny. So as you get closer and closer to the black hole, time actually will slow. And from an outside observer, as soon as you hit the event horizon around the black hole, time will stop. So it's actually, we think, can't quite see black holes, we can see how things move around them, that if you saw a black hole that had eaten universes, what you would see is all those universes on the edge, suns and galaxies all standing in place because time has stopped on that black hole. Because time is one of the most interesting things about our lives. But we treat time like a dirty dish rag. We're so disrespectful of time because when I tell you about a supermassive black hole and time ending, being able to see completely relative. But here's how we usually talk about time. You know, I was going to go to the grocery store, but I got a call from my mom, and then I was talking, and I just didn't have time. We treat time like it's this huge inconvenience to us, like it's this thing we've got to fight with all of our might. We buy things to fight time. We don't want to embrace time. Time ravages us. But really, time is the most interesting thing about any of us. We are nothing without this beautiful, wonderful concept. I love time. I think about time all the time. But I think about time as a contemporary person thinks about time, right? We regiment time. We parcel it out, we give it away, and we keep it to ourselves. We have a completely different view of time than people in the past. So let's talk a little bit about how people in the past have liked time. Let's go back to the Egyptians. So Egyptians, about 1500 BC, started using sundials. But here's the wonderful thing about sundials. They're not consistent. Summertime is not the same as wintertime. If you segment off your day to 12, as the Egyptians did, in summer, time's really long, which is good because in summer, guess what you're doing? Harvesting crops, make a war. People didn't make war in the winter. They were like, and time's up, going back. See you next summer. Actually, it's kind of funny, but that's how it was for a really long time. Time. You can count how many times I say time in this speech. And so Genesis, we got a 7-day week. All right, working on it, getting it regimented. Romans, I don't think so. Boom, back to 8-day week. Because they wanted a day to shop. There was a whole day that was just a shopping day. It was like market day. And it was an extra day on the week. So time can be fluid, and time has been fluid. There's even this thing called astrolabs, and I actually thought, should I go into astrolabs? Astrolabs are so weird. How can I even explain what an astrolab is? Here's kind of what an astrolab is. It's kind of like a clock, but it also has to do with the planets. So the planets going around the sun are imposed, and there's time there. And so you would measure time also by Saturn is rising. And it would tell you what to do. So if you were a Pisces like myself, and like this one thing rose, and I was thinking maybe should I change my job, but here comes Mercury, probably not. And so time and spirituality were all connected. But then we decided, we're done. We're done with this wishy-washy time thing. Let's like regiment it to the point of no return. And we did. We did it really well. And now we experience time like we experience time. Constant. All the time. How many times do I check my phone to check the time? All the time. All the time. I'm going to tell you just one little anecdote about how our even personal conception of time is changing. Don't judge me, but one time I was getting a manicure, which I'm ashamed. But I was getting a manicure. So it was with a friend of mine, and we were sitting there chatting, and the woman, who was probably 19, who was doing my nails, said to me, "What time is it?" And I looked up, and there was a clock, just like this clock, on the wall. And I said, "Well, it's 4:15. And she said, "Well, how did you know? You didn't check your phone." And I said, "I read the clock." And she turned around and she said, "You could read that?" Because she couldn't read a clock face. Because why would she ever have to read a clock face? Why would you ever have to take a moment, to take a second, to figure out what it meant? So even as we stand here, our conceptions of time are totally different. There's young people coming up, they can't write in cursive, and they can't read a clock face, so we have a whole secret language, you guys. Let's use it to our advantage. We even have a phobia about time now, chronophobia, which is really connected to the fear of missing out. If you're a chronophobic, you not only fear death, you fear waste of time, and you feel that you're missing out on time you have. This is an actual phobia that you can get treatment for. Because we are afraid of time, this big, beautiful, relative concept dish rag. So I'm going to talk about two different types of clocks. One's a metaphor, and it's not optimistic. And the other one hasn't quite been made yet, but probably is the cornerstone to that. It's the most optimistic version of time you can think of. So my metaphor clock is the Doomsday Clock. In case you don't know what the Doomsday Clock is, in 1947, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists got together and created a clock toward the end of our civilization, based on nuclear weapons. These weapons we had created were so dangerous to ourselves forever, as long as they existed. They created a clock to let us know how close we were to the end. Heads up, we're 2 minutes right now. And it's the closest we've been since 1953. So we haven't been this close in a long time. And we are this close for 3 reasons. US president and other nationalistic leaders distrust science, climate change, cyber threats. That's how close we are because of those 3 things. And I know it's not It's not really kosher to talk about nuclear threat all the time, but I think about it about 3 times a week. It's just a good reminder how close we always are to losing the time that we have. So even though the Doomsday Clock, a very negative name, there could be a positive attribute about it. To recognize how close we can be and to realize the threats that take us to the edge and walk back from them. Tell you what, 2 minutes. That's not good. Let's talk about an optimistic clock. Has anyone ever heard of the Long Now? There's a foundation called the Long Now Foundation. It has a website, longnow.org. You can go there. The Long Now was established in 1996. They wouldn't call it that. They would say 01996 because using 4 numbers indicates that we only plan to last that long. Using 5 numbers indicates we plan on lasting much, much longer. So how we measure time can be optimistic or it can be very, very negative. So it was established in 01996 to foster long-term thinking and responsibility in the framework of the next 10,000 years. So this is a group of people, and they do projects that will help our society move away from our connection to short-term thinking and help us think about being good ancestors and being good people and trying to last 10,000 years. Here's a project they've got going. This is real. So you can look it up on the internet. I'm not making this up, but we're going to get into some sci-fi right here. I will tell you that 2 of the leaders are Jeff Bezos, who owns Amazon, and Brian Eno, the music producer. These things are about to come together. They are making a 200-foot clock in the middle of a mountain in western Texas. It actually happens to be next to Jeff Bezos' space rocket launch area. So to get some space rockets over here, you've got 10,000 clock over here. And this clock is made from condensed ceramic. It will be able to run without electricity for 10,000 years. Inside it has chimes. 2 chimes will go off in a melody. Every melody will be unique. There will be no repeating melodies for 10,000 years. That's the Brian Eno thinking. The Beatles, Talking Heads. Here's a thought process. If a clock can keep going for 10 millennia, shouldn't we make our civilization go as well? So you can visit this clock. It's not quite running. There is a prototype in the Science Museum in London. You can see it. But to get to this, and you can if you're a mountain climber, you have to climb a mountain. There's a path, you have to grapple, go all the way up, and around a hidden area, there's a door. That door is made entirely of jade. Inside that door is a circle. You open it, you go inside, there's another door. This door is made of steel. You open it as well, and you go into a cavern. In that cavern, they actually created a robot to create a circular staircase that's perfect all the way down, and you can walk up and see this clock. Also in these chambers, there's a 100-year room, a 500-year room, a 1,000-year room. Hopefully, thinking that in those iterations, someone will put something. So right now, there's only one thing in one room, and it is a machine that measures the tides. That's what we've decided. Well, I mean the guy who has Amazon, and Brian Eno, the music producer, and some scientists. Not what I would have put in there. I would have put the Venus of Willendorf in there, the oldest fertility sculpture known. No one's asking me about this. I'm not hanging out with Jeff Bezos, I guess. I'm not really doing things right. But this clock is supposed to provide a counterpoint to us, to try to make us into better ancestors and better people. Is it going to work? I don't know. There's some really big ideas flying around out there, but this is such a beautiful counterpoint to the Doomsday Clock. The Doomsday Clock, of course, Basically, it's pointing out that we are going to kill ourselves unless we change. And this clock says we're going to make it because we'll start thinking better and we will be the change. I really want to go there, but I also don't really want to go to Texas. I don't really want to go to Texas. I've never been to Texas. I went to Arizona, though, and I didn't like that either. I'm going to take some water. Hold on. So how do we encourage ourselves to think in long terms of time? I find that I can think long terms of time by thinking about the past, because there is an arrogance in us being alive right now. Even within our own science fiction, we look like us, we talk like us, we act like us. Science fiction is just us, but in the future, I just don't think that's going to be, because us wasn't the past. Our values are totally different. Here's an example. The Achaemenid Persian Empire, which you're about to learn a lot about, sorry. There were 3 things taught to every boy: how to ride, how to do a bow, and how to not lie. Cornerstone of their entire civilization was in not lying, ever, about anything. They thought the Greeks were just terrible because they had a place in the center of their town that encouraged people to lie, and that was called a marketplace. So whenever they encountered the Greeks, they thought the Greeks were terrible people because they lied. To lie in any situation was a capital offense. And so they spent all of their time with their children, teaching their children to tell the truth. And although I think that maybe not lying is a part of our civilization, not really though. Because we understand that lies have purpose. I don't want to hurt your feelings. I'll lie a little bit. So when we think about time in the long term, we also have to consider that who we are and what we value probably isn't going to be who we are and what we value in the future. So let's talk about some ancient civilizations. The arrogance of being alive often means that we think that some collective part of us is going to last. You know, Charlton Heston, he's the American. It's not going to happen. Our language isn't going to make it, and our values probably aren't going to make it. And here are some examples of people who haven't. Let's talk about the Assyrians. The Assyrians have the worst PR in history. They just get trashed in the Bible. If you're really worried about your PR, the Bible is a big deal because a lot of people read it. And when we look back on the Assyrians, they were awful. They were known for their cruelty, but they were also incredibly important. They invented the first comprehensive written language, the first 360-degree circle. They ruled from the Gulf of Egypt to Persia, which is basically all Syria, Iraq, and Western Turkey, for 300 years. They were the top of their game. They were mean, though. Ancient cruelty, much different than modern cruelty. An example, if you had to go see the Assyrian king, there was a waiting room because you were going to wait because he was a king. And in the waiting room was a huge relief. And that relief was him sitting in a room with the heads of kings hanging on the wall. And there were women with them, and those women were all the wives of all the heads of the kings. So I'll let you know what's up. You mess with the Assyrian king, probably going to get your head cut off, and everyone you know is going to be his slave. They were a moderately cruel people. Well, of course, nobody liked them. The Babylonians, the Medes, they were like, we got to get rid of these guys. The Babylonians were especially upset because they took Marduk. Marduk is the god of the Babylonians. Here's the thing, is that we see a statue and we're like, nice statue. They see a statue and they think, that is my god. So when the Assyrians took their god, it meant that no one could get married. Their entire society had to stop. They lost everything, so they were a little peeved. The Assyrians had been beating them up forever, and so they decided, we're going to get rid of Assyria. We're going to do it by diverting an entire river right into their capital, Nineveh, and we will destroy Nineveh. And they did that. And they spread the Assyrians so far over the vastness of that area, slaughtered many, killed many, put into slavery. We're talking like biblical, every donkey killed style situation. 200 years later, the Greek writer Xenophon comes upon a city. It's huge. They say the first wall is 50 feet wide, 50 feet tall. He goes into this city and there's no one there. There's some like scattered refugees like living in tents here and there. But the roads are beautiful. It is perfect. It is better than anything he's ever seen. 200 years later, and he asks the people around, who built this place? And they went, the Medes maybe, could have been anybody. 200 years it took to lose everything, to lose their language, to lose their culture, to have their most beautiful city in the desert, and no one knows who built it. Time is tricky, and memory is also super tricky. The arrogance of being alive is often cut down by the reality of being alive. But don't worry about Assyria, because here's what happens after. There was a collective eye roll from everyone I know right now, because they were like, oh, science, she's going to talk about Cyrus the Great again. You guys, I'm going to talk about Cyrus the Great, the most important person who's ever been alive. No one knows about him, but he's the most important person who's ever been alive. Our collective history has let him go, which is really, really too bad. Cyrus the Great's amazing, or if you want to say their actual interpretation, Kurash the Great is amazing. So Assyria's gone. There's a vacuum. You know, Babylonians kind of make a play. Medes are over here doing their thing. And then out of nowhere, here come the Persians. And they're led by this man named Cyrus the Great. Well, he was Cyrus II, but then he became Cyrus the Great, who is potentially the best leader ever. He's mentioned 36 times in the Bible. He is the only reference to a Messiah who is non-Jewish in the entire Bible. God loved this guy. And here's why. Instead of cruelty, he thought he'd do this thing called tolerance. Of course, he took over nations. That was the thing you did. But instead of killing everybody and putting them into slavery and making people wear the heads of generals around their necks, he decided that, like, hey, we're going to take you over. You could still be in charge of whatever you do. Whatever. You can stay being king. I will be the king of kings. And it worked. And here's why he's the most important person ever. Because Cyrus took down Babylon. I know, I have a deep love of Babylon. The gardens, so cool. The language, the culture, lovely. But they took over this place called Judah, or Judea, and Israel. And they carted the Hebrews over and basically destroyed everything. Cyrus, when he took over Babylon, it's like, oh, you guys don't want to be here? You want to be over in Judah? He took the Jews, moved them back to their homeland, used his own coffers from his own budget, and rebuilt the temple. One of the walls of that temple in that place, it's been rebuilt a couple times, is still up. Like the Wailing Wall has a deep connection. So without Kurash the Great, we might not have Christianity. We might not have Jesus or Islam or any of the Jewish faith. But this person who was so important so vital to everything we do. Never taught, not known, specialist language. Except that if you run into me at a bar, I've had a couple beers, watch out. We're talking about Courage, greatest hits. And then that's why all my friends have a collective eye roll, because nobody cares. But I care, because what we know of the past is directly connected to what we know of the future. And here's how important monuments are to us. The Assyrians left behind some pretty amazing architectural feats. One of the most important was a gate to the city. Now, the city was supposed to be 18 miles in circumference. One of the gates stood in existence until 2006, and ISIS blew it up. The remains of Nimrod, which was another city of Assyrians, lasted until last year. It's a UNESCO heritage site, considered one of the most important sites in human history, and ISIS blew it up. Why would a contemporary group care about the Assyrians? Who cares about these things? But our monuments are so important to us that people in Iran and Iraq can be hurt by blowing up a door over 2,000 years old. Because that's how important what we leave behind actually is. You can destroy an entire culture. Oh, ISIS. Makes me really mad. Just thoughts that are going after Palmyra next. I'm not excited about it. So what we leave behind matters. In small group today, we discussed, here's my question. If I gave you a tablet, stone tablet, 12 by 12 inches, I could guarantee you it would last 500 years. What would you write? This is a group of people who lacks ego, the least egotistical group. Nobody said I'd write my name. Then I kind of felt bad because I kind of thought to myself, I would write my name. Because, I mean, as we mentioned in small group, graffitis existed for thousands and thousands of years. There's graffiti on the Colosseum that was made in the time of the Colosseum, and guess what it is? It is a person's name. We love putting our names on things, but C3 people, You're non-egotistical. You did not want to put your name on things, which I thought was really surprising. I mean, good for you. I'm going to tell you what Cyrus the Great put on his tablet, because it's the same size. The tablet does exist. At least Alexander saw it in 324. We don't know where it is now, but Alexander wrote down that he saw it, and I'm going to say it in my old-timey voice. Hear me, man. I am Courage, son of Cambyses, who founded the great empire of Persia, the king of kings. Do not grudge me my monument. Super cool. So the tomb, actually, if you'd like to see the tomb of Courage, it exists. It made it, which is crazy. You can actually visit it. Believe it or not, in 1971, Iran celebrated their 2,500th anniversary, marked on the day that he became their monarch. It's all connected, because time and space is amazing, because time is long, because when the Egyptians were building their pyramids, there were zuggernauts there. There were ancients there. There was a museum in Babylon of artifacts of the past. When the old world was old, it knew it was old. and it had known that things came before it. We think we're the tip top, right? Our civilization has made it, and we're going to make it in the future. And I would encourage everyone here to become a good ancestor. Because what we do matters. What we leave matters. Let us all take on the responsibility. Also, if I had a 12 by 12 inch plaque, which I will, it's called my gravestone. It's going to be bigger than that. It's going to be amazing. It's going to have my name, and it's going to say, I lived and I tried. That's it. Thank you.